The battlefield encountered the war had left the battlefield in ruins. The air was thick with the smell of smoke, the ground scorched from countless explosions, and the sky above dark with the black clouds of destruction. It was a place where the hopes of both humans and aliens had crumbled, lost in the chaos of an endless fight. The soldier, a young man named Jack, stood among the wreckage, his heavy boots sinking into the dirt with each step. Jack had seen horrors before he had witnessed the death of friends, the fall of entire cities, and the destruction of everything he knew. But today was different. Today, something stirred within him as he walked through the wasteland. The sounds of battle had faded, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Jack's eyes scanned the horizon, hoping to find some sign of life, something that wasn't destroyed. As he moved further, his eyes caught something unusual, a figure lying on the ground amidst the ruins. It wasn't the usual soldier or enemy combatant he expected to find. This figure was different. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he approached, unsure of what he was seeing. The figure was an alien, an enemy he had been taught to fear and despise. But this one was unlike any he had seen before. Her skin was a soft silver blue, almost glowing in the dim light of the battlefield. Her wings, massive and beautiful, were folded in on themselves, but even in their damaged state, they seemed regal. Her armor, crafted from an alien material, shimmered like liquid metal, marking her as someone of great importance. She was the alien queen, the leader of their enemy. Jack had never imagined he would see her in person. The alien queen was a symbol of everything the human forces had fought against. But here she was, on the ground, helpless and alone. She had been wounded, her wings broken from the fierce battle. Without thinking, Jack dropped to his knees beside her, his soldier instincts momentarily fading as his compassion took over. He didn't know why he was doing this, why he was helping the enemy. His mission had always been clear: destroy them, protect humanity. But now, all of that seemed distant, unreal. This was different. As Jack gently placed his hand on the queen's shoulder, he noticed how fragile she looked, despite her powerful reputation. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes closed, and her body was trembling with pain. Jack's mind raced as he wondered if she would survive. He had no idea how to help her. He was a soldier, not a medic, but something told him that if he didn't act, she would die here, alone in the wreckage. He glanced around nervously, knowing the danger. Any of his comrades could be nearby, and if they saw him aiding the queen, it could mean his life. But Jack couldn't leave her like this. She was an enemy, yes, but she was also a living being in need of help. The weight of the decision was heavy on his shoulders, but in the end, his humanity won out. He carefully examined her wings, his fingers brushing over the jagged edges where they had been torn apart in the fight. The sight of her suffering filled him with a deep sense of sorrow. He didn't understand it. This was the enemy, the one he had been trained to hate. Yet, here she was, vulnerable, broken, and in need of care. With a deep breath, Jack made up his mind. He would help her. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew that leaving her here to die wasn't an option. He carefully began to adjust her wings, trying to realign the broken bones with the little knowledge he had from basic training. His hands were trembling, but he kept going. Suddenly, the queen's eyes fluttered open. Her gaze was sharp, focused, and filled with disbelief. For a moment, she stared at Jack in confusion, and then, in a voice that was barely a whisper, she spoke. "Why are you helping me, human?" Her voice, though weak, carried a certain power that sent a chill down Jack's spine. He didn't know how to answer. What could he say to her? That he couldn't stand to see anyone, even an enemy, suffer. That he couldn't abandon her in her time of need, even though she had done so much damage to his world. Jack's mind raced for a response, but the truth was simple: he didn't have one. He wasn't sure why he was doing this. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was because, in the face of all the destruction, he still believed in the value of life. The soldier in him told him to walk away, to finish the mission, to end her life right here. But the human in him couldn't do it. As he continued to work on her wings, Jack realized something. This wasn't just about saving the Queen. It was about saving himself too. The war had stripped away so much his innocence, his belief in right and wrong, his sense of purpose. But now, for the first time, Jack felt a glimmer of something that had been lost for so long. Hope. The Queen didn't say anything more, but Jack could feel her eyes on him, watching him carefully as he worked. And as he finished, he couldn't help but wonder what would come next. Would his actions be seen as a betrayal? Or was this the beginning of something new, something that could change the course of the war forever? The answer was unclear, but one thing was certain: the battlefield would never be the same again. The enemy's gratitude. The air was still thick with the scent of burning debris, the remnants of the great battle that had raged across the land. The storm clouds above lingered like a heavy shroud, casting everything in a dull grey light. Jack sat beside the Queen, his hands still trembling from the intensity of the situation. His fingers had worked carefully, with all the knowledge he could muster. But now, as he looked at her, he realized that the hardest part was yet to come. The alien Queen's wings were still fragile, but they were beginning to heal. The bones, though cracked and torn, had been realigned with careful precision. The soldier had done his best, but now she was awake, watching him closely, her piercing eyes still filled with disbelief. As she slowly lifted her head, her gaze fixed on him, Jack could see the confusion in her eyes, mixed with something else. What, exactly, was she thinking? Was she angry, grateful, or was there something else hidden beneath her cold, distant exterior? The Queen shifted slightly, trying to sit up, but the pain in her wings was still evident. She winced, but only for a moment before she spoke in a voice that was stronger than it had been before. "Why are you helping me, human?" Her tone was direct, sharp, but there was something else to her: curiosity, almost like she was trying to understand the impossible. Jack was silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could he say? How could he explain the unexplainable? The soldier who had been trained to kill her kind now found himself kneeling in front of the Queen, helping her heal. Everything he had known about his mission felt distant now, like a fading dream. "I don't know," Jack finally said, his voice quiet but steady. "I just couldn't leave you like this. You're still a person, despite everything." His words felt strange, almost foreign to him, but they were the truth. The Queen stared at him for a long moment, her eyes narrowing as she took in his words. It was clear that this wasn't what she expected. She had been raised to believe that humans were nothing more than enemies, weak, selfish, and driven by destruction. And yet, here was one of them, putting his own life on the line to save hers. "You are not like the others," the Queen said softly, her voice almost a whisper. The words were not a compliment, nor were they a condemnation. It was simply an observation, a realization that something about Jack set him apart from the soldiers she had encountered in the past. Jack met her gaze, trying to understand her words. He had no idea how to process what she was saying. All his life, he had been taught to see the aliens as monsters, as threats to humanity. They were the enemy. But now, with the Queen in front of him, vulnerable, hurting, and human in a way that he hadn't expected, he was beginning to question everything. "You should hate me," the Queen continued, her tone unexpectedly calm. "You should want me dead. My people killed your friends, destroyed your cities, ravaged your lands. Why are you doing this?" Her words struck a chord deep within Jack. Pain and anger in her voice were undeniable, and he could see that she too was struggling with what had happened. He had heard stories, of course, about the alien invasions and the terrible things they had done to humanity. But now that he was looking at the alien Queen, now that he had seen her suffering, it seemed like the war was more complicated than he had ever realized. "I don't know," Jack repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "I just couldn't leave you like this. Maybe I'm just tired of fighting." The Queen studied him for a long time, her expression unreadable. She seemed to consider his words carefully, weighing them against everything she knew. And then, to Jack's surprise, she nodded slightly. "You are different," she said, her voice tinged with something close to respect. "And because of that, I will not kill you. But no, the Sif, you betray me. If you are lying to me, I will not hesitate to destroy you." Her words were a warning, but not a threat. Jack understood. In her world, trust was not easily given, and it could be shattered just as quickly. Still, something inside him stirred at her words. For the first time in this war, Jack felt like there might be a chance for something more than chance for understanding. They both sat in silence for a while, the sounds of the battlefield echoing in the distance. But the two of them, soldier and Queen, were separated from the chaos by something else now. An uneasy truce, fragile and tentative, had been forged. Jack didn't know where it would lead, or if it would lead anywhere at all. But for the first time in a long while, he felt something other than anger or fear. And so, as the Queen rested, her broken wings, Jack couldn't help but wonder, had he just made the biggest mistake of his life, or had he just changed the course of the war forever? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, this encounter had opened a door, and neither of them knew where it would lead. The growing bonded days passed slowly, as the war around them continued. But the two of them, Jack and the alien Queen, remained, hidden in the shelter of the ruined building. The air inside was damp and cold, and the flickering light from a broken window cast long shadows on the walls. Outside, the distant rumble of ongoing battles echoed, but here, in their fragile sanctuary, everything was quiet. It was almost as if time had slowed, as if the world outside no longer mattered. Jack couldn't help but watch the Queen as she rested. Her wings, once shattered and broken, were now mending, though slowly. He had done all he could to help, but there was still so much he didn't understand. She was not just an enemy, she was something far more complex. Her name, he had learned, was Zara. She was not just a queen, but a leader, one who had fought to protect her people, just as he fought to protect his. But despite their shared sense of duty, their paths had crossed only through bloodshed and death. And now they sat together in silence, neither truly knowing what to say to the other. Zara had been quiet, reflecting on the strange turn of events. Her thoughts were as complex as her feelings. She had never imagined that she would find herself at the mercy of a human, someone she had been taught to destroy. Yet here she was, with her life saved by one of them. She had been a queen in battle, a figure of strength, but now she felt vulnerable. Her wings, once symbols of her power, were now a reminder of her weakness. As Jack sat across from her, he studied her. She looked different now, not the imposing figure of war he had first imagined. Her expression, once fierce and unyielding, had softened over the past few days. She no longer looked like the enemy, but someone he could almost understand. The silence between them grew, neither of them speaking, but it was a comfortable silence, not the tension-filled quiet that had once existed between them. Jack felt the need to break it, but what could he say? "How long will it take?" he asked, his voice low. "For your wings to heal, I mean." Zaira didn't look at him right away. She stared out at the battlefield, the destruction still visible in the distance. Her wings, though now repaired to some extent, still hung limply at her sides. The healing process had been slow, and though she wasn't used to showing weakness, she was learning how to accept it. "It will take time," she replied, her voice calm but tinged with a sadness Jack hadn't expected. "But even when they heal, I will never be the same. The battle, ... it changes you. Inside and out." Jack didn't know how to respond to that. He couldn't fully understand her pain. He hadn't gone through what she had. But there was something in her words that resonated with him. He had been changed by this war too, in ways he hadn't fully realized until now. Perhaps the war had already taken too much from both of them. "You don't have to stay here," Jack said after a long pause. "If you need to leave, I won't stop. I'll stay here until you're better, but if you think it's best to go, I understand." Zaira finally turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. "You offer freedom to your enemy. Why?" Jack shrugged, unsure himself of why he felt the way he did. "Because maybe you're not just an enemy anymore. I can't just let you suffer because of some war we're both caught in. There's more to life than this fighting. At least, I hope there is." Her eyes softened as she took in his words. Jack had no idea how much that moment meant to her. She had never been shown mercy by an enemy before. It was a concept she had only heard of, never truly believed. But here, sitting before her, was someone who had given her that mercy, that second chance. "You don't understand, human," Zara said softly. "You're kind and mine. We've been at war for so long that it's hard to imagine a world without it. We were born to fight, to destroy. We've lost everything to this war, and now you offer me peace, a place in your world." Jack's heart clenched as he listened to her. Her words were heavy, burdened with years of conflict, and it was clear that she had lost more than just battles. She had lost hope, too. "We could end this," Jack said quietly, "together. I'm not saying it's easy or that it's going to happen overnight, but if we start seeing each other as people, not enemies, maybe we can find a way to stop the fighting." Zaira was silent for a moment. Then she nodded slowly, her wings shifting slightly as she moved to a sitting position. "Perhaps you're right," she said, her voice softer now. "But it's not just about us. It's about everything, the whole galaxy. I can't do this alone. I've been a queen, a leader, all my life, and I've never been able to stop the fighting. But maybe this time will be different." Jack felt a small spark of hope flicker inside him. Maybe they were both right. Maybe it wasn't about the battles they fought, but about finding a way to build something new. Together, the bond between them, once built on distrust and anger, was slowly beginning to change. They were both fighters, yes, But they were also, more than that, they were survivors. And for the first time in this war, they had something in common, a desire for peace. Jack sat back, staring at Zyra, wondering where this strange path would lead them. He didn't know the answer, but he was willing to find out. For the first time, it felt like the war wasn't the only thing that mattered, and maybe, just maybe, the peace they both longed for could start here, between them. The hidden truth, the quiet moments between Jack and Zyra, grew more frequent as the days stretched on. They spent hours talking, sharing stories of their world's things neither of them could have imagined before. For the first time, they found themselves seeing beyond the labels they had been taught to use: human versus alien, soldier versus enemy. They were both just survivors in a broken world, trying to make sense of what had happened. But as much as they talked, there were still things neither of them was ready to reveal. There was a weight in the air, a tension that neither could shake. The war had shaped them both in ways they hadn't fully grasped. Jack knew there was more to Zara's story, more that she wasn't telling him. And Zara, despite her growing trust in Jack, still held pieces of her past close, afraid of what revealing them might mean. It was late one evening, as the sky outside darkened and the sounds of battle seemed distant, that Zara finally spoke. Her voice was steady, but Jack could hear the strain beneath it. "There is something I need to tell you. Human," she began, her eyes not meeting his. She sat across from him, her wings stretched out slightly behind her, still fragile but healing. "Something that you need to understand." Jack watched her carefully, sensing the gravity of her words. He had always felt like there was more to her than the queen of an enemy army, the warrior who had led her people into countless battles. But he had never asked, unsure if it was his place to do so. "I'm listening," Jack said quietly, leaning forward. Zyra sighed deeply, her gaze still fixed on the ground. "You think this war is a battle between humans and aliens, but it's not just that. It never was." Jack's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean, the war?" "It's been raging for years. My people, your people. We've fought each other for so long." Zara's eyes finally lifted to meet his. There was pain in them, a deep sadness that Jack had never seen before. "It wasn't our choice to fight you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We were manipulated. My people were ... used." Jack's mind raced, trying to understand what she was saying. Used by who? The queen's wings twitched as she shifted her posture, clearly uncomfortable. "There are forces greater than both. Of our world's forces you have no idea about. We were drawn into this war by them, by those who wanted to control us, to control everything. The humans, the aliens, none of us were meant to fight each other. We were all pawns in a much larger game." Jack was stunned. He had been raised to believe that the aliens were invaders, that they were the aggressors. He had been taught that they had come to destroy humanity, to conquer the earth. But now, Zyra's words made him question everything he had ever known. Who are these forces?" Jack asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "They are the ones who have been controlling everything from the shadows," Zyra explained, her voice heavy with sorrow. "They've manipulated both of our worlds into this endless cycle of violence. They want to see us destroy each other. They feed off our pain, our anger, our fear. That is the true enemy, the ones who are behind this war, the ones who benefit from our suffering." Jack felt a chill run down his spine as he processed her words. He had always believed that the war was about territory, about resources. But this was something else entirely. It was as if the entire war had been a puppet show, and they had all been the puppets. So, we've been fighting for nothing, Jack whispered, almost to himself. Everything we've done, everything we've lost, it's all been because of someone else. Zaira nodded slowly. Yes, we have all been pawns, Jack. My people, your people. We've been used by those who see us as nothing more than tools. And now, we are the ones left to clean up the mess. The silence between them was heavy. Jack sat back, his mind spinning with the weight of what Zaira had just revealed. Everything he thought he knew about the war was a lie. The enemy he had been taught to hate, to fear, wasn't the true enemy at all. It was someone or something else hidden in the shadows, pulling the strings. For the first time in this war, Jack didn't know what to do. He had always known where he stood on, the side of humanity, fighting for his people. But now, the lines between right and wrong, between enemy and ally, were blurred. He couldn't just turn away from what Zaira had told him. He couldn't ignore the possibility that everything he had fought for might have been manipulated from the very beginning. Then what do we do now? Jack asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Zaira looked at him, her expression somber. We have to stop them, Jack. The ones who have been pulling the strings. If we don't, the war will never end. They will keep us fighting, keep us destroying each other. And if we don't stop them, they will find a way to start it all over again. Jack felt a surge of determination rise within him. The road ahead was unclear, and the truth had shaken him to his core. But one thing was certain, the fight wasn't over. It had just taken a different turn. If the war had been a game all along, it was time to change the rules. For the first time, Jack saw the full picture, and with it came a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just fighting for humanity anymore. He was fighting for something much bigger, chance to break free from the cycle of violence, to stop the true enemy that had caused it all. Then we fight, Jack said, his voice steady with resolve. Together, Zaira nodded, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. For the first time, there was hope in her eyes, and together they would fight not as enemies, but as allies, united against the forces that had caused so much pain. The battle was far from over, but this time they would fight for a future where peace was possible. The dangers ahead, the days grew heavier as the two unlikely allies Jack and Zara made plans to confront the true enemy, the shadowy force that had orchestrated the war. Their time in the ruined shelter had been spent not only recovering from the battle, but also in preparation. Jack had become more focused, his purpose clearer than ever before. Zaya, too, had changed. The anger that once burned in her heart had been replaced with determination. They both knew the road ahead would be treacherous, but they had no other choice. It was midday when Jack received the first sign that danger was closing in on them. He was sitting near the entrance, scanning the horizon through the small crack in the building's shattered wall when he spotted movement. A small group of human soldiers, armed and marching in their direction, had appeared in the distance. His heart skipped a beat. They were too close. It seemed that the war had caught up to them. Zaira, he whispered urgently, turning to the Queen, who was resting nearby, her wings now fully healed but still tired from their journey. She looked up at him, sensing the tension in his voice. "What's happening?" she asked, standing up cautiously, her eyes narrowing as she followed his gaze. "Human soldiers," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with a sense of urgency. "We need to hide." Zaira didn't hesitate. In an instant, her regal composure returned. She looked at Jack, her sharp gaze filled with understanding. She knew the consequences if they were discovered. Jack would be branded a traitor, and she would be killed without question. They couldn't afford to let the soldiers find them without another word. They quickly moved to the far side of the ruined building, hiding in the shadows. Jack's heart was pounding as he watched the soldiers approach. The group of 5 was moving cautiously, scanning the area, unaware of their presence. Jack had to think fast. If they were discovered, there would be no turning back. "Do you think they know we're here?" Jack whispered, barely daring to breathe. Zaira shook her head. "No, but they're close. We don't have much time." Jack's mind raced. There was a chance to escape, to move out of the area before the soldiers could reach them. But there was another problem. If they left, they would be exposed. Their cover would be blown, and the soldiers would surely follow. The war between their species might have been orchestrated by someone else, but the soldiers themselves were still very much a part of it. They would kill both of them on sight. "We have to get out of here," Jack said, his voice low but firm. "We can't risk staying. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to escape." Zaira looked at him, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "Then we move, but we must be careful. We cannot let them see us. We can't let them know the truth, not yet." They crouched low, slipping quietly through the shadows. Every step felt like an eternity. The soldiers were only a few hundred feet away now, and the tension between them seemed to rise with every passing second. Jack's hand gripped the hilt of his weapon, not out of necessity, but from instinct. His training told him to fight, to defend, but this time he wasn't sure if he could do it. He wasn't sure if he should. Zaira, too, seemed to be struggling with her own emotions. Her past as a queen and a warrior had taught her how to lead and fight with strength. But now, as she followed Jack through the rubble, she felt an unfamiliar sensation: fear. She had always been the one in control, the one who commanded armies. But here, with Jack at her side, she was unsure. They were both outsiders in this world of destruction, trying to navigate a path where peace could still be found. "Keep moving," Zaira urged softly, pulling Jack from his thoughts. "The soldiers are almost here." Jack nodded, his mind racing. They had to find cover. They couldn't be seen, not with their lives on the line. The soldiers were still unaware of their presence, but that could change at any moment. Then, just as they reached the edge of the building, a voice broke the silence. A soldier had spotted them. "Over there," a voice called out from behind them. "We've got movement." Panic surged through Jack. They had been spotted. "Run!" Zaira shouted, her wings flaring out behind her, the muscles in her body tensing as she prepared to fight if necessary. But Jack knew they couldn't afford to fight. They had to escape. The two of them turned and ran, darting between the wreckage, staying low and trying to make themselves as small as possible. The soldiers were shouting now, their footsteps quickening as they pursued. Jack's heart raced in his chest, his breath coming in short, desperate bursts. They rounded a corner, only to find another group of soldiers standing in their path. Trapped. Jack's mind raced for a solution, but his thoughts were a blur. There was no escape now. The soldiers had them cornered. Suddenly, Zaira pushed Jack behind her, her wings flaring out dramatically, shielding him from the soldiers. She turned to face them, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "You will not harm him," Zaira said, her voice low but commanding. "If you wish to survive, you will leave us be." The soldiers hesitated for a moment, surprised by the strength in her voice. They had never seen an alien act this way, defiant, unafraid. But the hesitation was short-lived. One soldier took a step forward, raising his weapon. "You're not getting away. We'll take you both down." Jack felt a surge of anger. He couldn't let them kill Zaira, not after everything they had been through. But before he could act, Zaira's wings lifted higher, and she stepped forward with a force that took the soldiers by surprise. A blast of energy shot from her wings, knocking the soldiers back and sending them sprawling to the ground. "Go," Zara shouted urgently, her voice fierce. "I will hold them off. You have to get out of here." Jack hesitated for a split second, torn between staying and helping her and the need to escape. But he knew what needed to be done. He couldn't let Zaira's sacrifice be in vain. With one last look at her, Jack turned and ran, his heart pounding in his chest. The path ahead was unclear, but he knew one thing. They were in more danger than ever, and the real fight had only just begun. The final decision, Jack didn't look back as he ran. The sounds of chaos, shouting soldiers, the crackling of weapons, and the loud, sharp hum of Zaira's energy blasts faded into the distance. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Every instinct told him to keep moving, to escape while he could. But somewhere, deep inside, a different feeling nagged at him. Guilt and fear. He couldn't let Zara fight alone. He couldn't. She had saved his life more times than he could count, and now, as she held off the soldiers, he was running. He was abandoning her. The thought twisted his stomach, but as he rounded another corner, his thoughts became clearer. He was alive for a reason. He had to survive. He had to get to safety. Only then could he come back and help her. He couldn't save anyone if he was dead. His legs burned with the effort of running, but Jack kept pushing forward, weaving through the wreckage of the battlefield. He didn't know where he was going. He had no plans, just a desperate desire to survive. The enemy was everywhere, and every corner turned seemed to bring him closer to danger. Yet, he couldn't stop. Finally, he stumbled upon a narrow alleyway between two shattered buildings. Jack ducked into the shadows, his breath heavy as he pressed his back against the cold, crumbling wall. For the first time, he allowed himself a moment to breathe, to think. He had to be smart about this. He couldn't keep running in a blind panic. He needed a plan. His mind turned to Zaira. What was happening back there? Was she still fighting off the soldiers? Was she hurt? The questions circled in his head like vultures, but there was nothing he could do at this moment. He had to trust that she would be able to handle herself. She was a queen, a warrior in her own right, but still the uncertainty gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Suddenly, a sound broke his train of thought. A faint, distant noise, footsteps, heavy, rhythmic. Someone was coming. Jack's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just the soldiers. It was something else, something bigger, something approaching fast. He peeked around the corner of the building, his eyes narrowing as he tried to assess the situation. The world seemed to stretch on forever, but the shadows were thick, and he couldn't get a good look at what was coming. Then a harsh, grating voice shouted across the space. Between them, "Don't try to run, human. We know you're there." Jack froze, his breath catching in his throat. He had been spotted. There was nowhere to go. The voice continued, colder and more menacing. "You've made a mistake helping her. You think you can change things. You think you can stop what's coming. You're just a pawn in a game much bigger than you. Jack's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary soldier. This was something far more dangerous. And from the sound of it, they knew exactly who he was. Then, a figure appeared from the darkness, tall, broad-shouldered. His armor gleamed under the dim light, but it was the emblem on his chest that caught Jack's attention, an insignia he didn't recognize, but one that made his stomach turn. "Who are you?" Jack demanded, his voice steady despite the fear rising inside him. "What do you want?" The man stepped forward, his face hidden behind a black helmet. His voice was chilling. "I am the one who has been pulling the strings, the one who has been watching you, and I'm the one who will end this war, one way or another." Jack's mind raced as he tried to piece together the puzzle. The man was not just some soldier. He wasn't even a general. He was something higher, something more dangerous. This was the true enemy, the one Zaira had spoken of, the one who had manipulated both their worlds into this bloody conflict. "You... Jack swallowed, his voice trembling with realization. "You're the one who's been controlling everything. The one behind the war." The man chuckled darkly. "You're smarter than you look. Yes, I've been watching. I've been pulling the strings. And now it's time to finish what we started." Jack clenched his fists, every fiber of his being screaming for him to fight. He had to stop this man. He had to stop the war. But how could he? He was just one soldier. And the figure in front of him, this man, was something far more powerful. The man's eyes glinted from behind the helmet, as though he could sense Jack's struggle. It's already too late. The war was never meant to be won by either side. It was meant to be a tool, a catalyst. And you've only delayed the inevitable. Jack shook his head, trying to make sense of the words. He wanted to believe that there was a way to change everything, to save his people, to stop the fighting. But the more he listened to the man, the more hopeless everything seemed. "You can't stop this," the man continued, stepping closer, his voice like ice. "The real war is about to begin, and neither you nor your precious queen can stop it." Jack's thoughts raced. He couldn't give up. He couldn't let this man win, not when there was still a chance to save everything. Suddenly, his comm device beeped, breaking through the tension in the air. It was a Sigma-coded message from Zaira. He grabbed it quickly, his heart pounding as he read the words. "The real enemy is here. I can't fight alone. Meet me now." Zara's words hit him like a wave, and for the first time, Jack felt like he had a purpose again. She needed him. She had always been the warrior, the leader, but now they were in this together. He had to make a choice. The figure in front of him smirked, sensing the shift in Jack's resolve. "You're going to help her, aren't you? Foolish." Jack didn't answer. Instead, he took one last look at the man and turned, his decision made. It wasn't over. Not yet. The fight for peace was far from finished. But for the first time, Jack felt like he had a real chance to stop the war, not just for humanity, but for Zaira's people too. And this time, he would not run. He would fight, with the determination of a man ready to face whatever came next. Jack set off towards Zara. The final decision had been made. They would end this together. A new beginning. The night air was cold, and the ground beneath Jack's boots was uneven, littered with debris from the shattered city. The sounds of the battle that raged on in the distance were muffled here in the shadows, where Jack made his way toward the rendezvous point with Zaira. The world felt quieter now, quieter than it had in years. It was as though the war was finally beginning to slow, and in its place, something new, something fragile was beginning to grow. His mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. The man he had encountered, the one pulling the strings behind. The scenes was just the tip of the iceberg. Jack now understood the true scale of the conflict. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about control, manipulation, and keeping both sides locked in an eternal cycle of hatred. But Jack and Zara, against all odds, had seen through that. They knew what they had to do: stop the puppet, master, break the cycle, and rebuild what had been destroyed. As Jack approached the designated spot, his thoughts shifted to Zaira. Her message had been clear: the real enemy is here. I can't fight alone. Meet me now. She was strong. But Jack knew she couldn't do this alone. Not anymore. The fight had changed. It was no longer about soldiers and enemies. It was about two people, once enemies themselves, joining forces to bring an end to a war that should never have begun. He stepped into the clearing, and there she was, Zara. Her wings were folded neatly at her back, but they still looked majestic. In the moonlight, she stood tall, her posture regal as always, but there was something different in her eyes now. She wasn't just the alien queen who had led armies into battle. She was a leader, a warrior, yes, but also someone who had lost so much, just like him. Jack walked up to her, his heart pounding with anticipation. The moment they had both waited for had arrived. This was their chance, Zara. Jack said, his voice low but steady. We can end this, together. She turned to face him, her eyes meeting his, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to fade away. There were no soldiers, no weapons, just a people, standing in the middle of the devastation, united by a shared purpose. Zara's expression softened, and for the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. We will end this, she said, her voice filled with quiet resolve. But not just for us, for everyone. For our people, for yours. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. The battle ahead would be their greatest test. They had no idea how to take down the one who had orchestrated the war, the one who had manipulated both their species. But together, they had something stronger than any weapon: hope. Hope that they could create something better, something beyond the cycle of violence that had consumed their worlds. We'll need help, Jack said. The soldiers, ... They won't just stop, they'll keep coming. Zara's wings fluttered, a sharp reminder of the power she still held. I have allies too, she said. Not all of my people are in favor of this war. They know the truth. We can use that to our advantage. Jack's heart lifted at her words. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone in this fight. Maybe there were others who saw through the lies and wanted peace, just like they did. I'll contact the resistance. Zaire continued, her tone steady, calculating. We'll need their strength if we're going to take down the one who's been pulling the strings. Jack glanced over his shoulder, his thoughts moving faster than his words. What about the soldiers who came after us? The ones we left? Behind they will come, Zaira said with a steely edge in her voice. But I won't let them stop us. We can't let them. Her eyes locked with his, filled with an intensity that Jack had never seen before. There was no fear, there only resolve. And the fire of someone who had seen the worst of the world but was still determined to make it better. We will end this, Zaira repeated, her wings now fully unfurled behind her, a symbol of both her strength and her willingness to fight for something more. Together, Jack felt a surge of energy at her words. It wasn't just about the war anymore. It was about rebuilding, about forging a future where both their people could live in peace. There would be no easy road ahead, but they had each other, and with that, they had a chance as the night stretched on. The two of them sat together, planning their next move, speaking of resistance and strategy, of allies and enemies, and of the future they would create. Their bond had grown from something fragile into something unbreakable. The war was not over, but for the first time in a long while, Jack believed that peace was possible. He didn't know how long it would take, or how much they would have to sacrifice. But he knew one thing: as long as they stood together, there was a chance, and that, in the end, was all they needed.